very nice. It gives you the one version is the English on the left and the Hebrew on the right, and then you can change it to all Hebrew, and you can change it to.
Oh, that's great.
There's two kinds of Hebrews. I don't know what's the difference. I showed it to my old Rabbi Joshua Stanford, who passed away in December. He thought it was great. He was in his 90s, late 90s already.
Wow.
He was a couple of days shy of his 100th birthday.
Right.
And but he thought it was really easy to read. I noticed that it didn't track exactly with whatever version people are using for Torah on Saturday morning.
Oh, okay.
I have the plot version of the.
Yeah, what I like is
Torah.
I do like having having a variety of different versions going on at the same time. I think it's always very fun.
Well, I was going to volunteer to read the English sometime, but my English is so different from what everybody else has. So.
Right. That can be a little bit distracting.
It's not that different. It's I think whatever the standard thing that the conservative movement uses.
Nice background.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, but how does my face look?
Ah, nice. Who's that? Oh, that's Rabbi Jim, I guess.
Don't leave me.
I'm kind of a ghost.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Are you a Star Trek fan, any of you?
Clearly, I need to let's see, maybe this one will work better. I don't know. No, they don't.
Oh, wow.
Oh,
That was good.
Oh, wow.
Could have been M. Go back to that one where the
hold on one second.
planet's behind you.
It's funny how only half of my head shows up.
The picture of the Golden Gate Bridge reminds me of that Star Trek film when they came in.
Oh yeah, when they come
in San Francisco to get the whales. Yeah. Oh,
this
that
is
was
amazing.
so good.
Well,
I guess because my shirt is white, it blends in with the wall behind me, and they think it's the
beautiful.
Wall. It's
you
really
look perfect.
crazy.
You're ready for
you can see my rainbow and my tie, but
and your face.
And my face, right?
M or something on.
Looks like outer space. Looks like Close Encounters of a Third Time. Oh, before of a third time.
I guess I have to get a green
Something
screen.
celestial.
Exactly.
It was spectacular.
All right, so I think we'll get started. I'll assume this is our group for now, and we will we'll learn. And if other people join us, that's great. And if not, they can watch us. They can watch us on YouTube later. All right. So the last time we spoke, we learned. This was 2 weeks ago. We learned the 3rd chapter of the book of Joshua, which was really quite interesting. And so chapter 4 kind of continues in much the same way. We were talking about how there are all these echoes with the Torah, specifically, right, the crossing of the Red Sea, and this now the crossing of the Jordan. And we spoke about how it is a kind of a strange notion that that we would even need God's help to cross the Jordan. Anyone who's been to the Jordan these days, knows that it's not much of a mighty river, and so the idea that we would have to sort of pile up the water seems a little crazy, but we can make sense of it from a kind of literary perspective and also a kind of a theological perspective, right? That the crossing of the Red Sea was the beginning of the Israelites' journey through the desert, their wanderings, which were supposed to be not for very long, and then ended up, of course, being for 40 years. And this similar crossing, right, is now the end of that whole period, and now entering into the next phase. And so all of the literary and verbal echoes, right, serve to remind us of that reality, right, and of the fact that God is seen as still being very active, right? When there's a sort of a notion or as the Bible continues, right, as we move from Torah into prophets and then later into the writing, right, there's sort of a sense that God becomes less intimately involved in the lives of the people. And so this is sort of a way of showing that even though that general trajectory may be true at the very beginning of the settling of the land of Israel, right, God is still very present in the lives. All right, Marbeth is having some trouble. Hi, Marbeth. Let's see if I unmute her for a second.
Oh, I'm so good.
Hi, Marbeth. How are you?
I'm great, sweetheart.
That's great.
We were going to try to get outside to see you, but it was Shabbat service. Yeah.
All right, good. So I'm gonna mute you now, Marbeth, and we're gonna continue our class. All right, there we go. Okay. All right. So we will continue with this with chapter 4, and I'm going to share the screen with you, and we will. Oops. There we go. Can everyone see it who has a screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Great. Okay. Good deal. And as usual, I'm not going to mute you unless for some reason there's a lot of background noise coming from your computer or telephone. And so if you are muted, please feel free to raise your hand electronically, which you can do under the participants menu. Or if you're on the phone, Elaine, and you want to raise your hand, you push *9, and that will alert me to the fact that you'd like to say something. If I ignore you, meaning if I have not noticed your raised hand, do feel free to just blurt something out. But that generally is actually less effective due to the way that Zoom filters the noise. All right, so and if you have also one thing to point out is if you have a different version at home of the Bible and the translation is very, very different, feel free to flag it and we can discuss. Okay. So I'll read from the one that's on the screen, and we can and people can follow along with that one, or you can review what you've got at home and see how translations differ, because that's always such a fascinating topic to try to figure out, well, what the heck does the text actually mean? All right, and it came to pass when all the nation were clean passed over the Jordan, that the Lord spoke unto Joshua saying, okay, Ann, what do you got?
Yes, well, my translation doesn't say anything about the people being clean. It says, and it came to pass when all the people had passed over the Jordan that the Lord spoke to Joshua saying.
Yeah,
What's this clean business?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I do think that I don't think it means physically clean. I think it means, like, trying to think of an example. He cut. I mean, trying to think of an example, but he cut it clean off, right? Completely, I think is what it means. I think it's just an old English expression.
Mine says clean.
Yeah.
Mine has clean.
Yeah.
What translation is the one with clean?
It's the old JPS, and it's actually based on sort of the sort of King Jamesy type of a thing. So that let me see if I can find a King James Bible on the shelf here. I'm in someone else's office, so I don't know what's here. But what I can tell you is that in the Revised Standard Edition, it is, yeah, when all the nation had finished passing over the Jordan. So I think, you know, clean in the sense of completely is, I think, what it means.
Okay, well, it's reminiscent of when they encountered Balak with the donkey, whatever, sent the spies in to look at the land. I don't
Yeah.
think this is that
Mine is from
version.
1947, so that's,
Yeah, the one that's on the screen, it was published in 1917 by the Jewish Publication Society, and then republished many other times until the 70s, when the Jewish Publication Society came out with its what's called New JPS, which is the one that is generally found in Jewish Bibles in English. All right, so Suzanne,
Yes.
please.
this is the same.
Oh,
Does kasher tamu shed any light on the meaning?
say it again.
Do the words kasher tamu shed any light on the meaning?
Yeah, I think I don't know tamu. Maybe that actually, I don't know what that word means. It's
Does
interesting.
that come from the pure, impure?
That's what I was just thinking, but that I think there's another vowel in there. That would be an interesting question if that is why they came. But I mean, it must mean something along the lines of finished or completed, right? Tom, right? That is, you know, the word
Well,
Tom means simple or complete,
But if it
right?
were clean, couldn't
Right.
that be ritually pure?
I guess
Meaning-
but you know what I like about that hint, right, is this idea, right, that you pass through the waters of the you know, you pass through the living waters and you come out purified, right? So it's quite possible.
Mhm.
Yeah, go ahead, Ann.
it seems to be in the part of the translation, if it at all follows the Hebrew, it's in the part that says in English here, and it came to pass. So that would be the time passed and what have you.
Yeah, I mean, Vayahi is it when it came to pass. Vayahi is it came to pass, and then Kol Hagoy, right, the entire nation, or Ka'asher.
Oh, Asher,
Yeah, Ka'asher is when.
Tamu.
Ka'asher is when, and so Tamu is Tamu. We can even look this up.
Is it the past tense?
Yeah,
Look at that.
They were something.
Oh, Hago,
oh no.
oh. F-I-N.
This is cool.
So I'm showing you, this is actually a very helpful kind of resource if you ever need it. It's the
Yeah.
so I'm going to assume that it's up here.
Mhm.
Huh, interesting. I'm going to have to ask my betters about this. Let's move on, and we will. I'm happy to explore it more. All right. So when they had clean passed, right, when they had finished it all, when they completely, only when they were all over into the land of Israel, right? What did God say to Joshua? Take you 12 men out of the people, out of every tribe, a man, and command ye them, saying, take you hence out of the midst of the Jordan, out of the place where the priest's feet stood, 12 stones made ready, and carry them over with you, and lay them down in the lodging place where ye shall lodge this night. And then, so again, we have as I think already Anne mentioned, the spies, right? The story of the spies,
Yeah.
one person from each of the tribes, right? we have that same kind of an echo. And then Joshua called the 12 men whom he had prepared of the children of Israel out of every tribe of man. And Joshua said to them, pass on before the ark of the Lord your God into the midst of the Jordan, and take you up every man of you a stone upon his shoulder, according unto the number of the tribes of the children of Israel, that this may be a sign among you, that when your children ask in time to come, what mean ye by these stones? Then ye shall say unto them, because the waters of the Jordan were cut off before the ark of the covenant of the Lord, when it passed over the Jordan, the waters of the Jordan were cut off, and these stones shall be for a memorial unto the children of Israel forever. Right. So let's just finish this unit, and then I will and we can pause and discuss. And the children of Israel did so as Joshua commanded, and took up 12 stones out of the midst of the Jordan, as the Lord spoke unto Joshua, according to the number of the tribes of the children of Israel, and they carried them over with them unto the place where they lodged, and laid them down there. Joshua also set up 12 stones in the midst of the Jordan, in the place where the feet of the priests that bore the ark of the covenant stood, and they are there unto this day. All right. So initial impressions about this little unit of the Bible.
Well, you have, where am I here? I get confused about the mirror imaging here.
Yeah.
Yes, I have a hand up someplace. Oh, there's my hand.
There's your hand. Okay. That's the problem with these backgrounds, is that everything blends in.
Yeah, and everything is mirror imaged.
Right.
So,
Right. Well, it's mirror image for you, but it's not mirror image for us.
oh, whatever.
Yeah. Imagine it's like a your camera. The camera on the screen is your image on the screen is like you inside of a one-way mirror interrogation room, right? So everything looks backwards to you, right? But to the cops on the other side of that interrogation mirror, right? They see you completely in the right perspective. So everyone sees you the right way, Naomi. Only you see yourself backwards. So just to let you know.
All right, I'll consult some psychiatric person.
Exactly.
I don't see myself backwards.
But I'm intrigued by a couple of things here. The 12 stones made ready.
Yeah.
You don't pick up 12 random stones. You somehow find one of the 12 that's there that you're supposed to take. And the other thing that I find very reminiscent is in number 6, what mean ye by these stones?
Yes.
Come to the second son at Pesach.
Yes.
And here ye has a totally different response. Here ye is not cutting ye self off from anybody. But, well, okay, and you get the same kind of answer. Yeah, this is what the Lord covenanted with us. And then
You get. I'm just.
we have a bunch of other stones here someplace in the middle of the river.
Right. So this is the thing that. So you've mentioned two things that I think are, really, really interesting. The first one, right, is that we have again another echo. We've already had an echo like this in chapter 3, right, of Exodus, right, where we have children asking about something, some ritual, here it's an artifact, right, asking about some artifact, and it's sort of like a prompt for teaching, right, to teach about the heritage of the nation and about the nation's relationship with God, right? And it is interesting, right, that which I hadn't noticed, Naomi, but you're absolutely correct, right? That the form of the question, right, is very reminiscent of the evil child, or the bad child, or the rebellious child, however you want to put it, right? And it is, I think that is evidence, right, that that the Torah, or in this case, the book of Joshua, doesn't necessarily mean this in the way that the rabbis decide to understand it, right? That in the Torah, I think these questions are generally neutral, right? They are just, they're questions without that sort of spice of oh, this person, this kid is rebellious or disrespectful. That is a sort of an attitude that's added by the rabbis to make their pedagogical point. But still, I think what's so interesting, right, is that the Torah sets up, and here in Joshua we have it too. It sets up this kind of ideal of questioning, right? That you're supposed to put things out that will pique the interest, pique the curiosity of your children, to give you an excuse to tell them the story, right? So you're not supposed to just start with the history, right? You're supposed to start by getting them interested, right? And one of the things that will generally make kids interested is seemingly random assortments of stones turned into something, some sort of a memorial. All right, but what do we make though of number 9? Right, we have this one thing that makes sense. Okay, there's a memorial at the point on next to the Jordan where our ancestors crossed over, right? And again, just to point out, right, that word right here, la'avor, right, that is the root of Ivri, right, of the Hebrew, right, the one who crosses over. So Avraham ha'Ivri, right, Abraham the border crosser. Here it is again, right? We're crossing another border. Go ahead, Suzanne.
Could you move the screen up so we could see verse 9?
Sure.
Thank you.
There we go.
No, keep going. No.
All right.
I only see
I
verse 8.
find it also
Hold on,
interesting.
wait a second, Ann. Suzanne,
Okay.
you have something more to say?
Got it. I can barely see verse 9. If you could
Oh,
move it up
okay.
a little bit more.
Yep. Better?
Yes.
This is better.
Okay, good. All right. Maybe my screen is bigger than I think it is. So I'm gonna go like this. I'm gonna make my screen smaller, so hopefully I'm not fooled by how much. Okay.
So 10 is at the bottom of my screen.
Okay, good, perfect. That's what mine too. Okay, good. So Joshua also says. So what do we make of this? We have one that makes sense, right? We put it right where we crossed over. And when we make our family trip to the Jordan to to check out the history of our country, right? We see this ancient monument, and it's going to make the kids ask a question, and we're going to tell the story about how this happened. All right. So what's the point of number 9? Go ahead, Jeannie.
Well, I think it's just evidence. It's concrete evidence. A great miracle happened there.
Okay, I'm completely with you, right? But what about number 9? Let's look at number 9. Joshua also set up 12 stones in the midst of the Jordan, in the place where the feet of the priests that bore the ark of the covenant stood, and they are there to this day. All right, so I see 2 people raise their hands. So I'll start with Suzanne, and then go ahead, Suzanne.
Okay, so the stones are in the middle of the Jordan River.
Right.
How can they be seen? I mean, isn't water washing over them? Isn't water washing them away?
I mean, that is what I find so interesting about this, right? That obviously the Bible thinks that they were not washed away, right? Because it claims that they are there till today. But the question is sort of like, well, who can see them?
Right.
Verse 7, the waters were cut off.
Right. Now, who else had a hold on one second here. Oh no, yeah, this is working. Okay. Who else had their hand raised? Was it Jeannie?
Well, I didn't take my, well, just, I said before that I thought it was evidence. It's fake. You know, it's there, that it's just preserving like a crime scene, or it's a scene of a miracle. But that's what I said before. And I think you're saying that it's more symbolic than that.
Oh, even more simple. I love that idea, right? I love that idea, right? That there's this memorial on land, right? There's a memorial on land, and that's the one we can see, right? But the one that really matters, right, is the one that's underground and we can't see it, which I think is really fascinating, right? Because it suggests, right, that it suggests to me at least, what the resonance that it has for me is that, we have to believe in a God we can't see, right? That's the big challenge of Judaism, the big challenge of the Torah, right? The struggle throughout all of the story of the Exodus and the story of the wanderings in the desert, right? Is the challenge of believing in a God that's invisible, right? And so here we have a visible monument, right? But that's really just kind of a visual substitute for the actual monument, right? That is invisible. I don't know if that makes any sense, but I just thought of it now. But I think it's really interesting.
Well, it's the concrete representation. It's like the statuary, maybe in Christianity, they say they don't worship it, but it stands for what you venerate, maybe something like that.
Exactly. I think that
stands for something that's that's abstract.
Exactly.
It represents it.
Right. I think, which is really interesting. So I just want to point out, right, that in what I have here is the Jewish Study Bible. It basically says that this is two different traditions, right? So that there's the tradition that we set up the monument. We set that up in Gilgal, right, where they spend the night. The other tradition is that Joshua sets it up in the middle of the river, right? This is as I think I mentioned last time when we spoke, right? This is very common in the Bible, right? We see this again and again and again throughout, right? Is that our ancestors were not perturbed necessarily in the way that early modern and later modern people became, with what we would maybe call contradictions in the Bible, right? They weren't upset about that, right? Because these were both traditions, right? That were holy traditions, and they weren't willing to decide between them, right? They weren't willing to say, okay, we'll just go with the one that's on land that people can see, and let's just get rid of that verse 9 because it makes things complicated, right? Their attitude was, let's just keep both of them, right? When we move later into our millennia, our millennium, right? Or even with the rabbis, right? We spend a lot of time trying to harmonize, right? Trying to make sense of what we understand as contradictions, and so we want to make them work together. And that is, in a sense, what I was doing, right? And Jeannie is doing, right? By saying, well, there's actually two monuments, right? There's actually two monuments, and one is the one you can see, and one is the one you can't see, and so both. But just to point out, right, that these are two different ways of looking at our overall tradition. All right, and I just want to point out, right, that there's another echo with the Exodus story, right, is here, right, in Exodus 24, right, Moses says, come up, am I right about this? Yeah. This is when Moses it brings up the priestly family, and they witness God, right? So unto Moses he said, come up unto the Lord, thou and Aaron and Nadab and Abihu and 70 elders of Israel, and worship ye afar off. And Moses alone shall come near the Lord, but they shall not come near, neither shall the people go up with him. And Moses came and told the people all the words of the Lord and all the ordinances, and all of the people answered with one voice, right, and said, all the words which the Lord hath spoken we will do. Right, this is the very famous passage that says Na'aseh v'nishma, right, that we agree to do something. Actually, no, that's a little bit later. I'm sorry, that's a little bit later. This one is literal, right? All the things that God has said we will do, right? And Moses wrote all the words of the Lord and rose up early in the morning and builded an altar under the mount and 12 pillars, right, according to the 12 tribes of Israel, right? So this is something we do, right? And it's very much associated with covenant, right? All the words of the Lord, right? This is the covenant of God, right? This is God's Torah, right? And so we will, and to commemorate, right, that giving of the Torah, right, we're going to lay down 12 pillars to represent the 12 tribes of Israel. All right, so back to Joshua. So just again to sort of point out that there's all these echoes with Torah here that speak to the sanctity of this moment. All right, so let's now continue. Anything else that people want to say about the actual crossing and the this first little part? Okay, so we'll move on to the next part. All right, very interesting, right? That now we're sort of going back in time. Right, we're going to go back and start the story again. And the priests that bore the ark stood in the midst of the Jordan until everything was finished that the Lord commanded Joshua to speak unto the people, according to all that Moses commanded Joshua. And the people hastened and passed over. Right, very interesting, right? Is there any real reason to hurry here? But they're hastening, right? By Maharu, right? And yeah, go ahead, Jeannie.
Just the thought of what happened at the Red Sea, the river could rise up again.
Oh, right, exactly, right.
May not be a great place to tarry in the middle of the river.
Yeah, not a good place just to sort of like hang out for a while, right? You want to kind of move along when you got walls of water on either side.
You don't want to push your luck.
Exactly. But but again, for me, this also resonates with again with the story of the Exodus, right? How did the people leave Egypt? They left in haste, right? Go ahead, Jeannie.
No, they left in haste. That's why they had to make the matzah.
Exactly.
And maybe they're in a hurry to get where they're going. Is that possible?
You would think after 40 years, you're eager finally to get, I finally get to move into my new place. And it came to pass, right, when all the people were clean passed over, there again, right, we have the same thing, Vayahi kasher tam kol ha'am la'avor. Oh, I'm just going to point out here, right, look at the language here. Vayahi kasher tam kol ha'am, right? So we have it's singular, right? And it's right? The word is which is, the people or nation, whatever. Up here, right, we have kol hagoy, okay? Slightly different language. All right. So I don't know that I have anything particular to say about that. Just to point out again, though, that we have different traditions, different ways of talking about what has happened. Okay. Vaya avor Aron Hashem. Right. Okay. So the people pass. Right. That the ark of the Lord passed on, and the priests before the people. And the children of Reuben and the children of Gad and the half tribe of Manasseh passed on armed before the children of Israel as Moses spoke unto them. About 40,000 ready armed for war passed on in the presence of the Lord unto battle to the plains of Jericho. Right. So now we're kind of getting ahead of ourselves. Right. All right. And on that day, the Lord magnified Joshua in the sight of all Israel. And they feared him as they feared Moses all the days of his life. Right. So this is kind of a crucial moment, right, for Joshua. Right. This is the moment when it stops being theoretical, in a sense, right, that he is going to stand in the be Moses' successor, right? But here at this point, God does what he's been saying he was going to do, right? Which was to make Joshua as powerful as Moses, right? And so let's again look at the language here. Other translations, let's see. I have in the Jewish Study Bible, which is the new JPS, it says, on that day the Lord exalted Joshua. And so they revered him all the days as they had revered Moses, or revered, I guess, probably revered. Yeah, I misread that. Revered him. Okay, so Gidal is the word, right? Gidal, yeah, go ahead, Jeannie.
Well, does Hebrew not have all these nuanced words that we have, like revered and exalted? They just have Gidal.
Well, that's actually what I'm gonna get. I'm gonna sort of ask you. It is true, right, that Hebrew has fewer words, right, than English does, right? And so it's actually true at this point. I think probably most languages have fewer words than English, because English is a gobbler of other languages' words, right? We take any word from any language, right? We're happy to have it. Hebrew is much more conservative, especially since, although modern Hebrew has become more of a gobbler, right? The idea of modern Hebrew was that we could take the language of the Bible, right, and use its native elements to create the way to say anything that we wanted to say. So I actually think that a different way to put it, right, rather than the idea that Hebrew has fewer words than English, it's to say that each word in Hebrew has the capacity to do more work, right? It can carry more meaning than English words. Although, of course, it depends on the word. But here, Gidal, right, means to grow, right, in a transitive sense, right? To make larger, right? So magnified, actually, in a sense, is a more literal translation, right, than exalt, right? Exalt is already a more of an abstraction, right? Whereas a lifting up, right? Whereas a magnifying, right, is a more sort of concrete image, right? Sort of like it's enlarging, right? Enlarging. Go ahead, Jeannie.
Well, it's more relevant to the Hebrew words. Magnify.
Right. Well, I mean, it's actually
It is a better, a closer translation.
Right. So you get into these sort of questions when you begin to discuss translation, right? Because yes, literally it does mean magnify or enlarge, right? But in the sense, right, of making him exalted in front of the people, right? And then we have this other really wonderful disagreement about in the sense, right, of making him exalted. All right. So hold on. Let's see here. I apologize. I've lost sight of my spell. Oh, right here. Can everyone see my arrow?
Yeah.
Okay. Vayira'u oto ka'asher yar'u et Moshe. Right. So this word Yud Resh Aleph, right, is also a very powerful word in Hebrew because it means awe, right? They were in awe of him, right? And when we think of the word awe these days, we tend to think about it in terms of awesome, right? Really good. If that's awesome, it means it's really good, right? Whereas, awesome really should, according to the dictionary, right? Awesome has this sense of it's like frighteningly good, right? So there's sort of fear and so that's why the older translations tend to focus on fear. The newer translations don't, in general, like the idea of people being afraid of God, so they put revere or something like that instead. Go ahead, Barbara. Barbara, did you want to say something?
Who, me?
Yes.
No, I just
okay.
moved my hand by
Oh, you moved your
accident.
hand. Okay, sounds good.
Sorry.
No, that's just fine. That's just fine. Okay, so yeah, so that, all right. So, but this is that sort of moment where Joshua really becomes the guy. Right? And the Lord spoke unto Joshua, saying, command the priests that bear the ark of the testimony that they come out of the Jordan. And Joshua therefore commanded the priests, saying, come ye up out of the Jordan. You know, he likes to, you know, be very clear. And it came to pass, as the priests that bore the ark of the covenant of the Lord came up out of the midst of the Jordan, as soon as the soles of the priests' feet were drawn up into the dry ground, that the waters of the Jordan returned unto their place and went over all its banks as aforetime. And the people came up out of the Jordan on the 10th day of the first month and encamped at Gilgal. Okay, so the 10th day of the first month, what month are we in? If it's the first month?
Son,
Say it again.
Nisan,
Nisan, exactly. Nisan, the first month of the year is Nisan, right? So, which I think is, you know, again, really interesting, right? So when are they showing up in
spring.
in spring, but even more pointedly, right? They're showing up 5 days before Pesach, right? They're going to have their first Pesach in Holy Land, right? So they left Egypt, right? Right after Pesach. They wandered in the desert for 40 years, and now they show up in the land of Israel, right? Just in time to get their sacrificial, their Pesach sacrifice all set, right? And they're going to have their first Pesach in their own land. Go ahead, Jeannie.
Some of us were staying afterwards last time and inquiring about what direction they're moving in, because they came from Egypt, which is to the west.
Right.
Now they're crossing the Jordan. I thought it was going to be from west to east, but no, it's from east to west.
West.
Now they're on the east border
Yeah.
of Jordan, of Jericho. How
Yeah.
did they overshoot?
Right.
How they missed the entire promised land? It
Yes.
seemed.
I don't
That
think
is a
they
great
missed
question.
it.
That's a great
They
question.
went underneath it.
They went underneath is the short answer, right?
They went
So,
south. They went
yeah,
around the south.
yeah, Joshua crossing the Jordan.
Sinai. So they're at Sinai.
But I want a map.
So I had looked up last time, Shittim and Shechem. Are those the
Right.
names?
Those are right. Those are.
I got a good map.
Oh, here we are.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a, yeah.
All right. I don't. Christian.
Over to the left looks good. Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah.
Right. So you get the idea, even though this isn't a very big map.
No, right,
You
but
get the idea, right, that they kind of go. They go through the side. What's is now the Sinai, right, and then they come up around the other side. Here we go. Right. So they've been, obviously no one really knows how it goes, right? But they go down. This is one idea, right? That Mount Sinai is in the south of the Sinai Peninsula, right? But then they wander this way, and they have Deuteronomy when they get to the I don't know why I'm pointing at it. You can't see that. When they get up here, right, where it says number 7, right? This is where Moses gives his final speeches, right? And then when Moses finally dies, right, then they go to this one, right? There we go. Okay, so here's Jericho. Here's where they were Shittim, right, when they were, and here's the Jordan. Here's the Jordan River, right? And Gilgal, who knows exactly where Gilgal is, but it's probably, would be somewhere over here where my pointer finger is, right? Because it would be on the Israel side of the Jordan River. All right. So And those 12 stones, which they took out of the Jordan, did Joshua set up in Gilgal. Right, so right here, it says right here, right, the people came on the 10th day of the first month and encamped in Gilgal on the east border of Jericho. Okay, so on the west bank of the Jordan. And these 12 stones, which they took out of the Jordan, did Joshua set up in Gilgal. And he spoke unto the children of Israel. And again, we have this same formula, right? When your children shall ask their fathers in time to come, saying, what mean these stones? Then ye shall let your children know, saying, Israel came over the Jordan on dry land. For the Lord your God dried up the waters of the Jordan from before you until ye were passed over, as the Lord your God did to the Red Sea. Okay, so now, right, we're seeing here that there's an explicit equation being made, right? It's no longer just in the land of sort of like if you read the Torah recently and you sort of are paying attention, right? Now Joshua's making it explicit, right? This is the same as the Red Sea, which he dried up from before us until we were passed over, that the peoples of the earth may know the hand of the Lord, that it is mighty, that ye may fear the Lord your God forever. All right. So very important, right? That this is a transition. This is also a transition, right? In the sense of, right, that the earlier question that we had, right? What do these stones mean for you? Right? It means that, that God cut up the river so that we could get past, right? But now Joshua adds a piece, right? Which is actually in some ways, again, relevant to the question of the Red Sea, right? That why did God split the sea?
Israel could cross the Red Sea.
There we go. So that the people could cross. But that begs the question, right, Ann? Why did God send them that way? And then, if the Egyptians were going to be chasing after him, that, or why did he send them that way in general, right? It was a dead end. Why? That doesn't make any sense. So what would be the reason? Yeah, go ahead, Jeannie.
Well, maybe it's just the fastest way to get out of there. Was it?
I don't know, but it seems to me it was like it was no way to get out of there, right?
Dead end, actually.
I'm sorry?
It was a dead end at
It was
the
a
shore.
dead end. Exactly, it was a dead end, right? So the fact that God had to split the sea, right, suggests in a way, right, that God sent them that way on purpose, that God wanted to have to split the sea. Now, what would be the motivation for wanting to do that? Go ahead, Barbara, or Suzanne, or whoever. Someone had their hand up, but I don't know who it was. All right, I would want to propose, right? Yeah, go ahead, Jeannie.
Well, to show them his greatness so they would have faith in him.
Well, there's that to be sure, right? But I would go even a little bit further, right? That yes, it was in order to convince the Israelites, right, that they should have faith in God, but also, right, to show God's might to everybody else, right?
To their enemies, to make their enemies fear him.
Their enemies, right? And so, as we discussed, when we talked about Rahab, the harlot, in Jericho, right? When we talked about that story, right? She was already aware of that story, of the story of the Red Sea, right? She was, and she said, the fear of the Israelites is on everybody in the land of Canaan, right? Because we all know, right, that you're invincible because God is with you, right? So that is, and so Joshua actually says that explicitly, right? That God did the Red Sea in the same way he did. He split the Jordan, right, to demonstrate God's might, and to sort of it's like a publicizing the miracle, right? What we do during Hanukkah, right? We have a menorah that we put in our window or outside of our door, right, to say we're going to mifar oh yeah, sorry, I can't even say the word. Anyway, I'm going to publicize the miracle, right? I'm going to let everybody know that this happened, right? And so this is setting up, right? This is now transitioning, right, from a focus on the Israelites and their journey, right, to expanding the focus to include the people of Canaan, who now are represented as being, quaking in their boots, right, waiting for, God forbid what's going to happen next. All right, so let's move on to the next one. All right, and it came to pass when all the kings of the Amorites that were beyond the Jordan westward, and all the kings of the Canaanites that were by the sea, heard how the Lord had dried up the waters of the Jordan from before the children of Israel until they were passed over, right? That their heart melted, neither was their spirit in them anymore because of the children of Israel. All right. So this is really, it's interesting, right, that the chapter division is here, because in a way that really makes more sense with the end of chapter 4. All right. And then now, so chapter 5, right? We'll begin chapter 5 today, and then we'll continue with it next week. At that time, the Lord said unto Joshua, make thee knives of flint, and circumcise again the children of Israel the second time. And Joshua made him knives of flint, and circumcised the children of Israel at Gibeath ha-Aralot, right? And Aralot is foreskin, right? So, hold on one second. Yeah, hill of the foreskins is what this means. Hill of the foreskins. That's what I thought. All right. And Joshua made him knives of flint, and made for himself, probably, right? And this is the cause why Joshua did circumcise. Right? All the people that came forth out of Egypt that were males, even all the men of war, died in the wilderness by the way after they came forth out of Egypt. For all the people that came out were circumcised, but all the people that were born in the wilderness by the way as they came forth out of Egypt had not been circumcised. For the children of Israel walked 40 years in the wilderness, till all the nation, even the men of war that came forth out of Egypt, were consumed, because they hearkened not unto the voice of the Lord, unto whom the Lord swore that he would not let them see the land, which the Lord swore unto their fathers that he would give us, a land flowing with milk and honey. And he raised up their children in their stead, them did Joshua circumcise, for they were uncircumcised because they have not been circumcised by the way. And it came to pass when the nation were circumcised, every one of them, that they abode in their places in the camp till they were whole. And the Lord said to Joshua, this day I have rolled away the reproach of Egypt off of you. Wherefore the name of that place was called Gilgal unto this day. All right, so I'm just gonna ask for a second. Is that Judy?
Yeah.
No. Who's at one? Sorry, I just lost you.
172321822.
Yeah, 1822. Who is that?
Elaine.
Oh, it's Elaine. Oh, I'm sorry. I had you named Elaine for a while, but you've reverted to your number. All right. So I think this is very, very interesting, right? Why do we have a second circumcision? Does that make any sense to you?
No.
No.
Go ahead, Jeannie.
But it is confusing when it says second circumcision, but doesn't it mean that they circumcised in Egypt and now they're circumcising? They're not circumcising the same people twice.
Exactly.
It's a new generation because they weren't circumcising in the desert. Now it's time to circumcise again, or they're not going any farther.
Exactly. Well, not going any farther. And although that is probably true, but I think what's really interesting about this is, again, the timing. Right, when they were in the land of Egypt, right? Why did they have to be circumcised in the land of Egypt? Does anyone remember?
No.
Because
Okay,
they're
it's in,
Israelites.
well, because they're Israelites, of course. But what is the so let's go back and see if we can find this. All right, I think it's at the end of chapter 12. All right. Right. Okay. So who is allowed to participate in Passover? Right. And the Lord said unto Moses and Aaron, this is the ordinance of the Passover. There no alien shall eat thereof, but every man's servant that is bought for money, when thou hast circumcised him, then he shall eat thereof. A sojourner and a hired servant shall not. Right. But basically, and when a stranger shall over to the Lord, let all his males be circumcised, and let him come near and keep it. And he shall be as one that is born in the land, but no uncircumcised person shall eat thereof. All right. So what's really crucial, right, in order to celebrate Passover, all of the men need to be circumcised. Right. And so the first Passover that happened in Egypt, right, the Bible is very careful to say all those men were circumcised, right? They did not break the rules by participating in Passover, in that first Passover when they were liberated from Egypt, right? They were all kosher, right? But now, right now we've showed up in the land of Israel on the 10th day of Nisan, right? Passover is like just around the corner. I mean, if it had been a normal day, right, the butchery would have been completely full, right? This year it was a little different, right, because of our terrible coronavirus situation, right? But on a typical day, at a typical Pesach, right, the supermarkets, people would be running from supermarket to supermarket looking for that shmora matzah that they didn't buy, right? It's stuff like this, right? But imagine, right, if you have 600,000 or whatever huge number of men, right, and they all need to be circumcised in 5 days so that they can all participate in Pesach. They all need to make the Seder, and they can't do it, right, if they don't have their foreskins removed, right? So, so this becomes a ritual necessity, right, for them to participate in Passover, right? But also, I do think, Jeannie, right, that you're exactly right, that it's also necessary, right, for them to in order to move on into the land. Go ahead, Ann.
I'm wondering, apparently they had stopped doing circumcision during the 40 years in the desert. Is that correct?
Exactly.
There were no knives in the desert. I mean, there was no rabbi.
I believe they had stopped.
They dropped them in the sand.
That's I don't know. It's a really interesting question. Let me see if there's an indication. No, I guess it's just, this is just being just stated that way. So but I do see something very interesting here in verse 8, right? And it came to pass when all the nation were circumcised. Very interesting. All right, I want to point this out. This is really interesting. Vayahik asher tamu kol hagoy lehimol. So does anyone recognize this phrase?
It's from the beginning.
It's exactly the same as the beginning of the previous verse, previous chapter, right? And again, this use of the word goy. So very interesting. So I'm gonna go, and I'm gonna read you what is in the commentary here, which is really interesting. It says it's rarely, the word goy, nation, right, as we probably know, right, is rarely used as a designation for the Israelites, right? Usually we reserve that word for other nations, right? The non-Jews or the goyim, right?
Yeah.
And we usually, when we talk about the nation of Israel, right, we talk about Am Yisrael, right, the people, right? so I'm interested to sort of, it seems to me that there's a possibility, there's a hint, if we go back to chapter 4, and I think we can end on this, right, that we have this sentence, right, that the Goy passed over the Jordan, right? And then we have it again, right, in verse 11, that already it was the Am that passed over, right? There's a way in which there's also a transition here, right, from the Israelites being a Goy, right, being a nation like other nations in some way, right, to being an Am, right, to being a nation in its own country, right? That a nation that has its own territory, and that this is that sort of transitional moment that the book of Joshua is marking. All right, so I think we'll end here. Next time we will pick up in the middle of chapter 5. I think what we'll do is actually we'll start at verse 9, because I think this is a really interesting verse, right? And then we will go and we will celebrate the first Passover with the Israelites in the land of Israel. And so, bring your matzahs that you have left over. Bring those macaroons that have been bouldering in your.
Probably have some in my refrigerator.
In your cupboard, and we'll have a Pesach Sheni, a second Pesach, to celebrate with the Israelites as they make their first.
But how do you have an uncircumcised high priest carrying the Holy Ark?
This is a great question.
Or for that matter, Joshua.
But remember Joshua came out of Egypt, right? He's
the high priest.
He and Caleb are the only ones, but
this is weird.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, because Aaron was circumcised, right? But he gives over his inheritance, right, to Eliezer, who presumably is not. A very interesting question. Go ahead, Jeannie.
Could you talk for a moment about circumcision? Did other ancient people practice this? Where did this come from? This sort of obsession with circumcision?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I don't, off the top of my head, I don't have that much information, but it's obviously a very common ritual practice. And it's very interesting to me, right, that our tradition, which is so vehemently opposed to any kind of bodily mutilation, right?
At death, when you're dead, there's no autopsy.
Right. I mean, right. The human body, right, is so sacred in Judaism, right? And you're not supposed to make marks on yourself. You're not supposed to gash yourself. And so the fact that this, right, is something that seems to go so against the other parts of our tradition makes it very, very powerful. I think part of it, right, is that it is a physical sign of the covenant, right? And I do think that it did have the effect, and does have the effect to this day, right, of sort of marking boys as Jewish or non-Jewish, right? And I think that's one of the reasons why even today, when people are often very very concerned and worried about, do we really want to do this? Most Jewish parents still do, because there is this way of, it's sort of a mark of being a Jewish boy. And when you're with other Jewish boys, there's something very powerfully atavistic about the being connected.
Couldn't I think of something less invasive, like cutting off the tip of the ear lobe, or
yeah, right.
What they do with cats.
But it's also, but again, remember that it's also deeply tied, right, with generativity, right? It's the locus of fertility in men, right? And so there's a way in which marking your penis, right, is a way of sort of submitting yourself to God as the true source of fertility. So obviously there's much more to say about about circumcision than I can do here, but happy to talk about it a bit more next time. If you have more questions, and I will, if I have time, which I can't promise I will, but if I have time, I will try to poke through and see if I can't get some, get a little bit more background on it.
Thank you.
All right. All right. Thank you, everybody. I will see everybody next week. There probably will be there probably will be a new time for this. I'm going to be doing some work over at Hebrew Rehab in the afternoons, starting fairly soon. So I will have to find a different time for this group. I will keep you posted. It will be, I hope, in the new, when the next flyer comes out from CCB, it'll be there, and it'll always be included in my emails. All right. So thanks a lot, everybody.
Please wear 2 masks.
What?
Wear 2 masks over
Yeah,
there.
exactly. Double masks.
Slogan,
Double
Prosper.
mask.
Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Okay. Nobody likes leaving meetings.
No, very sad.
Bye, everybody. See you
Bye-bye.
next time.
Depends on when it is.
Exactly. We'll make it happen.
Whenever.